In the Emerald Isle, something unexplainable is happening. Tonight, prepare to witness the most frightening event in horror podcast history. A journey into the depths of horror history. First Class Horror presents the ClassHorrorCast. Evil wears many masks, but pure horror wears only one. Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.
In many ways, Eduardo Sanchez is one of the most important horror directors of the past 20 years. When he and his team of collaborators unleashed the film The Blair Witch Project out into the world in the summer of 1999, it became a cultural phenomenon and spawned countless found footage horror films that have become a staple of the genre. Up next is my conversation I had with Ed. We talk about many things from The Blair Witch Project to his movies such as Altered and Seventh Moon. We discuss some TV shows, some Blair Witch lore, toy collecting and much, much more. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Yeah, man, it's really tough. I mean, yeah, like real life gets in the way. I mean, I was really lucky with, Blair Witch, because I mean, it could have easily turned out a different way, and I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Yeah.
But because I mean, most of the people that I went to film school with, aren't even in the business anymore,
Yeah, which is crazy when you think it's probably like, I mean, the career you've had is probably less than 1%.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I feel so blessed to have not only, had, been able to make some movies, but also now being able to direct, a lot of television, which is, really, really fulfilling, and then now hopefully have our own TV show soon. So, that's kind of been the goal for the last 5 years. And it looks like we're finally getting, at least we're getting a little more deeper into it. It's a tough game.
I feel like everybody is waiting for that announcement.
Yeah, no, it's, we've been, my partner Greg Hale, who was one of the producers on Blair Witch.
Yep.
We're the only guys who are still together. And I've been directing and he's been writing and he's just been coming up with really great stuff. And I go in and help him pitch and, kind of throw ideas at him and, edit some stuff. But mostly it's him. But he's just, really creatively kind of going crazy right now. And so we've been pitching basically every 4 months or so, a new television show idea. And we've gotten, made a lot of contacts and, made some inroads at a bunch of different places, but we have only sold one show. And that was a few years ago. And it was a show that was supposed to take place in Cuba. And, it became politically completely impossible to do it after, right when we were about to start scouting. It was 2016, Castro died, and then Trump got elected, and all business, at least all American business in Cuba, ceased to exist almost overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is a pity.
Yeah, it was a pity. I mean, it was a good dream come true, man. We were gonna shoot in Cuba, and it was just it was Stars, which was a major channel that had a lot of money, and they were very excited about our pilot, and we were ready to go. So now we just sold a show to Apple, and
nice.
We're still developing it. We're still probably at least 6 months from a green light, but still, it's good to be in the game and still be able to.
Was that something that
be able to play in this arena?
Yeah. Was that something that you guys kind of had a? Well, I suppose maybe not so much for Greg, but for you, was that something that you've always wanted to do?
What, my own TV show?
Yeah. Or be involved in the film business, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've I mean, I grew up on television, obviously, in the 70s. And I think, television went through a period where, for a long time, I mean, it was kind of like where the second class kind of talent went, unfortunately, but, then HBO came along, and Sopranos and Breaking Bad and all these really incredible shows started popping up on television. And now, television is like, it's going through it's in a resurgence that I don't think it's ever had before because of all the streaming services. There's so much demand for content. All of a sudden it became more feasible to do TV shows than films. And also I still feel like there's more diverse, obviously there's more diversity in television than there is in the movies, as far as like in all aspects, as far as like, ideas and, representation and, all that stuff. The coolest stuff out there was television. I mean, it's like there's always films that come along and kind of, blow up. But now, you hear about television shows really more often than movies, People are recommending this and that. And,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I think especially with things like Netflix and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
It's really just, it's crazy to see. Like, I mean, we see it a lot here in Ireland where a lot of things doesn't release at the same time. So,
yeah.
And then we get stuff on Netflix the same time as the US or Canada or whatever. And like people it just explodes. It seems like every time Netflix has an original now, it just goes, it's like crazy. Facebook, everywhere you look.
Yeah. No, we've pitched to Netflix a bunch of times, and, they're always like, we want to keep pushing, keep doing, unique stuff. I think it's cool, man. I think it's really great to have, back in the day, it was mostly just 3 networks, and then, 4 networks. And if you couldn't do that, then you were kind of, if they didn't buy you, were kind of done. But it's great to have all this, all these opportunities to do cool stuff. And also the idea that they're like really, they really want, they want unique stuff. Like even Apple, we pitched them a show, and they really liked it, but they went, they were like, well, we'd love to kind of, they kind of guide the story in a more ambiguous way, you know what I mean? A more ambiguous route, which was very, which was surprising, because usually, it seems like a lot of people want bigger and, crazy or whatever. And their whole thing was kind of, scaling it back.
Really?
Yeah. So, and they're all like kind of trying to find a unique path, you know what I mean? And I think all of them are kind of, at this place where they want, they want unique stuff. They want stuff that, hasn't been seen before, and they're willing to take chances. And it's, it's a really exciting time, man. Do
you feel like companies like that are more hands-on maybe, or more involved?
Well, I mean, I think, it depends, I think. Like we did a show in, back in 99, 2000, after Blair Witch, we got a deal with Fox, and we produced this show called Freaky Links. And, we worked with Dave Goyer, who, went on to, he was already a successful screenwriter. But he went on to do really amazing things and still does amazing things. But him and Greg came up with this really cool show, and, everybody starts off with, we want, the Blair Witch, we want the edginess of Blair Witch, and we want to, push the envelope, and we want to kind of do something that, again, like hasn't been seen before, but back at, and then they, at least with that show, they progressed to just, they got progressively more generic, kind of pulling all the punches, you know what I mean? of the show and all the edginess. And it's especially for Greg and David, that's, really, creatively stifling, and very frustrating.
It sucks the life out of the project, kind of.
Yeah. So, and then so the end result is like this show that's still, a good show. But, if you look back at the original pilot or the original kind of treatment that they did, would have been a much better show if they had just let, the creatives do their stuff. And I think it seems like a lot of places are, kind of have learned that lesson, like if you look at it, I think part of, and I've never worked with them, but I have, heard people, stories. It's like, you people like, stage, like a place like HBO, it seems like they're really involved during the development. But then once you get the idea honed in, they seem to leave you alone for the most part. And I think, network television, at least our experience with network television with Fox, it was very different. It was just, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Yeah. It was, film, like television making by committee. Kind of a little, the same situation we ran into with the second Blair Witch movie, that it was, we were having these conference calls with 10 people on the phone, and they were all creatively involved in throwing ideas out for the movie. And it was just like,
yeah, I guess, I suppose everybody wanted to be in the Blair Witch business at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that, the business side of it, I understand, none of us are here to work for free, and everybody wants to make money and be rewarded for their work, obviously. They became, the Blair Witch Company kind of overnight, and they had a lot of, back in those days, Artisan had a really great stable of, filmmakers that were working with them. And, the almighty dollar kind of pushed everything aside, and it's understandable, it's like, it is a business. But, I think they, it just happened, man. But anyway, some places have learned, I think, to kind of, to the balance between, commerce and art. So.
Yeah, because I watched Blair Witch 2 recently, actually this week. And I watched it with the commentary track. And Joe seems a little disgruntled. I had read, read some articles that he said it just kind of, even when he was brought on board slowly, he just started to lose his grasp on what it became. Yeah. Well,
I mean, I wasn't in on the conversation, but my partner at the time, Dan Myrick, told us that he had a talk with Joe, as he was starting the process, and Dan, warned him, he was like, you're putting yourself in a pretty precarious situation as far as as filmmaker, because, you have this hard deadline, you have, a studio that seems to be more interested in, that is definitely interested in just cashing out on this hit that they never thought they'd have. And, you're stuck in the middle of it, and Joe, Joe was a talented dude. So, he made his decision and kept moving forward. And I don't blame him. I mean, I would have probably stuck with it too. He didn't know it was, the shit show that was coming, But yeah, because it was pretty obvious to us what was happening, and once, we bowed out of, actually creating something, because they, at first they wanted us to do something, and we wanted to do a prequel. We wanted to go back to the late 1700s and, tell the story of the Blair Township,
And that was something you guys had actually thought about at that point, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was an idea that I had. It was pretty obvious to go back, in the Blair Witch mythology, but I had an idea about, like a colonial era horror story, almost like The Witch. I had it, back in film school. Just the idea of it'd be cool to do a period piece, horror movie. And then when Blair Witch came along, it was just kind of a perfect, oh my God, we could do a prequel as this, kind of called it a colonial horror story. And it's something that I still honestly want to do.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. I've read so many backstories and stuff for.
Yeah, I think it would have worked for Blair Witch. But so then we pitched them, the idea, and they were like, we don't, we think we should do a sequel, and we're like, well, we're not interested in doing a sequel at this time, So they went away, and then like a few months later, they came back and they were like, okay, we'll let you do the prequel, but you have to release it, in October of next year. And this is like, I remember being at this December of 99, I guess. And, and Dan and I and all the Haxon guys, had been through the Blair Witch mill, we had been, the movie had blown up and we had gained, all this notoriety, and we were, Dan and I
had actually, I think, I had put up a couple of posts on Reddit asking for questions and stuff and different things that people might want to know. And, somebody actually used a Conor McGregor quote to explain your guys' I suppose exposure with Blair Witch, which was from nothing to something to everything, which I think kind of sums it up.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we were like in this, still in this, at the end of this year, this craziest year of our lives. And, they were like, yeah, we want you to do the prequel. And, they were like, we have to release it in 10 months. And, we were just like, we don't even have the story. We have the basic storyline, but we don't have a script. We haven't cast. And, we wanted to do it in the winter. So it meant that we were going to have to travel somewhere, and, shoot during the summer. And we were like, it's impossible, that's not a good way to make a movie, So we declined, and they were already writing scripts. And then around that time is when Joe, I guess, pitched them, and, they moved forward with Joe's vision.
Yeah. If you guys had been left the option, how long would you have left it between the original and maybe a prequel or a sequel? Or
I think if they would have said, let's skip a year and get ready for 2001 for a 2001 release of Blair Witch prequel, I think we would have agreed. But they, they wanted, they just wanted it something right away, and they felt that it was going to die down, and we felt like the opposite. We felt like, I think you should just kind of back away from it a little bit and then come back. People are still going to remember. It's not like you're coming back 10 years later,
Yeah. I think that seems to be, from what I see, that seems to be the fear that they had, that this would die down and people wouldn't care, which I think is crazy considering we're sitting here 21 years later.
And also I think they had like business, ideas. They wanted to, expand IPO, or, they definitely wanted to, they had like kind of corporate interests.
Yeah.
Which is natural, so they were a corporation. So of course they're going to have corporate interests kind of guiding them a little bit, pushing them. But yeah, man, it's like one of the things, like the only thing, you can go back and look back at that time, and there are some things, a lot of mistakes we made, but I think that era, like I think that there would have, I think if we would have played it a little more smart, and they would have played, we would have been more convincing with them. I think we would have walked away with at least a prequel, if not a few films, during the 2000s with, a couple of new Blair Witch movies.
Would you guys have, or did you ever consider a sequel, or is that something that you think could have been done?
Yeah. Actually, years later, like, maybe, I don't know, probably 10 years ago or 8 years ago or something, we went back to Lionsgate. I'm not sure how it happened, but we were like basically talking about doing another movie, and they actually, commissioned a a script, for a sequel that Dan and I wrote, and it was a good script. It was, it definitely kind of expanded the mythology, and it was not about, the three filmmakers. It was more, and it was a complete different story. It was not found footage. But I think the movie was a little more expensive than they wanted it to be. And they ended up, passing on it. But, they definitely, even to this day, one of the executives over there was like, man, I really like that script you guys wrote. You guys really nailed it or whatever. But, it's just kind of.
Do you think that's something we'll ever see or can see?
You mean the script or the actual movie?
I would like to say the movie more than anything.
The script, I don't know. It's probably out there somewhere. I'm not sure. I've let a few people read it, but it's kind of like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how. If I didn't. It's not my decision to get it out there. So, yeah. We've kind of held it close. But yeah, I think that maybe, if you did a search, you might be able to find it out there somewhere.
And is that something like, would you guys push for something like that again, considering, I know we had the sequel a couple of years ago. Is that something, do you feel like a lot of people, I think the general consensus from a lot of people seems to be that they enjoyed the movie, but they would have enjoyed it more if it hadn't have been called Blair Witch.
Yeah. Well, I think that the answer to your question is that, I think that they are, we don't own Blair Witch, Lionsgate owns Blair Witch. So it's basically completely up to them. And, unfortunately, like usually what happens with these, it's been 20 years, 21 years since Blair Witch. So, I think that, that they always try to go and look for, the new talent to kind of tell the story, like retell the story, like really younger talent, most of the time. So I think that, we've had a bunch of run-ins, Greg and I think Dan as well. We definitely had the run-in with the sequel, and then Greg and I went out and a few years ago and actually we developed a TV show together with them. And I'm not sure what is, happening with it. I know that we're not involved. I'm not sure what stage it's in. But there was talk about doing a television show. And I think that is I think that's where the next Blair Witch, incarnation will occur is a television show, because it's kind of a no-brainer. And we pitched them a pretty good show, and it just for some reason it didn't work, and it was it just sometimes that stuff happens, and it might have been something where we don't have enough television credentials yet, to like power our own show. But hopefully, my thing, and I think Greg feels the same way, is that, I'd love to go back, and revisit Blair Witch. Even if they do another TV show and they, hire me to direct an episode, I would be, I'd love to do it. So, we'd love to play in that sandbox again. And we have, a crazy amount of ideas, But in the meantime, we've kind of, obviously we have to move on, and it's really in their, the ball's in their court.
I just feel like it's a huge misstep in a way, not just because we're talking, but I think the idea of, I hear you talk a lot about like your passion for TV and stuff now, and I do honestly think that that's probably, after seeing the way the last movie went, I would love to see it go. The TV route, and I do think that you can explore prequel.
Because I think television gives you more more canvas to paint on. It gives you more time. It's just it's just basic math, I guess. You have, instead of an hour and a half, you have usually 10 hours or 10 episodes. Almost 10 hours of so you can basically spread things out and develop things that sometimes work and sometimes don't work, and you have a chance to experiment and test out a lot of ideas. And with a movie, it's like you have to have the premise and you have to get into it and have to have the scares every 10 minutes or every 5 minutes or whatever the formula is, and you have to whatever, you have to have all these kind of benchmarks that you have to hit.
Yeah, I just think you're right with the canvas thing. I'm not sure. I don't know, but it would be cool to see maybe a prequel season. And you could set different seasons in different parts or stories in the universe.
Yeah. That was, that's kind of the general idea, because there is, Blair Witch world is like, there's time travel all over the place in the Blair Witch, world. It's not really a time travel, it's not really centered on time travel as far as like the marketing and the obvious, story. It's a horror movie, but it is really a time travel story. In every other one of the movies, there's, weird, there's, there's the universe shifts around the protagonist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. A lot of people actually had messaged me online and asked me to ask you that. Is that something that's actually, is that lore or canon, that there is actually some sort of time travel involved, or is that
absolutely?
That was never intended?
At least, I don't know. It's definitely time travel, but it's I don't know if it's linear or whatever. You get into like really deep shit with time travel and stuff. But there's definitely alternate universes being explored in Blair Witch. Even the first one, the house that they go into at the end of the movie doesn't physically exist in 1994. That it was burned down in the 40s after Rustin Parr was hung, and or was hanged. So that when you look at that house on that footage, that house doesn't exist. The only thing that exists in that area is a foundation. According to the Blair Witch mythology. That's where Heather's footage was found, in the foundation of the Rustin Parr house. So, you have this. So in the movie, on film and video, you have time travel. You have alternate reality where this house somehow exists in the 90s, so that Heather, Mike, and Josh, or Heather and Mike can run across it. And then obviously in the and Book of Shadows, I haven't seen Book of Shadows in so long, but obviously probably definitely has those elements. And then the third movie, of course, there's weird alternate time loops all over the place, which was, a really fun part of the movie. So yeah, it's definitely there's definitely universe changing and time travel and, environments change, and people. Even Heather, Mike, and Josh were stuck in these woods that aren't really that big, but they somehow couldn't get out of it. They were stuck in this this weird loop. So for sure.
Have you ever seen any of the online theories that people have come up with for other versions of the movie not involving a witch?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
The Mike and Josh.
Yeah. No, and like when, and I think, I love it, and I think when Dan and I came up with the original idea, and then when everybody else got involved, part of the strategy was that we were never going to explain it all, that we didn't even know what really happened. For me, is there something supernatural happening in Blair Witch Project? Of course. Of course there is. That, like I said, that house doesn't exist in real life.
Yeah, I feel like it in one sense, it's frustrating because everybody wants the answer. Everybody wanted me to come on and ask, and I want to know.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I feel like it creates something special that we don't really see anymore. Everything has to be cookie cutter, wrapped up, explained.
Yes, which is like, the most, probably one of the most frustrating parts of like, horror at this day and age. I think that, there's definitely some great horror films being made, but the best ones are the most ambiguous ones, like I think that the tendency is to like, let the cat out of the bag definitely by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like, the movies that I loved as a kid, that really scared the crap out of me, didn't provide all the answers. It was just, there was no resolution. You know what I mean? Sometimes it was just like, okay, like Amityville Horror is, one of my favorite, haunted house movies, probably my favorite haunted house movie. And, they just run away at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
No, I mean, well, it's just, there's no like, oh, let's go back and kick the ghost's ass and, and prove that whatever, there's no like Scooby-Doo kind of ending. And I feel that like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
like
I don't know what started it.
recently,
Did Sixth Sense start it? Like the whole idea of that brilliant ending of Sixth Sense. That I know that everybody wanted to do a twist, but is that part of the culture that's kind of it's mutated into something where like now you have to know everything or else you get frustrated? And for me, it's like, well, once you know everything, it's not that scary anymore, is it?
Yeah, true. And like I recently seen, I don't know if you've seen it yet, The Invisible Man.
Yes, I saw it,
and I mean, I really, really, really enjoyed it. Much more than I thought I was. But one thing I will say is it has kind of all those things. You get, I feel like it's made for mainstream. So at the end, we get our perfect resolution and we walk away with the final shot.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it too. And I really enjoy, I can't remember the filmmaker's name, but I really enjoy his films. He's really doing great stuff. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like you could have ended that movie 5 minutes earlier, and I think it would have been a cooler.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And you know what I mean?
And I thought that's actually where the movie was going without spoiling it for anybody. I did think the movie was going in a different direction. Yeah.
To me, it was like, it would have been cooler if you would have like, left it a little more ambiguous, Mm-hmm. But it's a choice they made, and it's making a lot of money, and it's a good film. So, but yeah, I sometimes, it's a little frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, I do feel like that was definitely something that Blair Witch had going for it, and I was always curious, was it intentional? In the sense that, I mean, it's been 20, 21 years.
Yeah.
And like even still to this day on Reddit and stuff, you've got guys who like, I have come up with so many different theories, so many different, and it's just so open. It's just, nobody knows.
Well, because like, I guess, Blair Witch is, just the style that it was shot in, it's a documentary basically, it's a fake documentary, but it's a documentary. So I think that it's like every documentary, like, every successful kind of documentary that kind of blows up on Netflix or HBO or whatever. Like there's this, like, where there's a murder or where somebody there's always something controversial about, you don't get all the answers a lot of times in documentaries, you know what I mean? Like, they set up the case and they give you the evidence, but then you're like, oh, did he really kill that person? And it's fun to speculate, it's fun to go there and speculate. And I think Blair Witch still has such a, when you watch it, it still feels like, it feels so real because of the performances and, the way we shot it and the way we edited it and the sound mix. It just feels like a real experience, even though that these are actors, that at the end you kind of want that closure like you do at the end of a good documentary, you know what I mean? And so that I think there is this certain, and we didn't give any answers, obviously. So there's definitely, it's still a mystery. I mean, it really is a mystery, like for me, like if you follow, not just what's in the movie, but if you follow the mythology of, of the movie. Like, how the hell did Heather's footage end up in the foundation of that, Rustin Parr's house? Like, how did that happen? And who put it there? Somebody put the camera in her backpack and put all the reels of film and all the video films and buried it, in the foundation of the Rustin Parr house. And if you go even further, it was buried under like layers of dated, according to the archaeologists that discovered it, is that, that it was under, something, it was under undisturbed soil.
Yeah. This couldn't be.
So, okay. So how do you do that? How did that happen? So, we definitely created something that the only explanation is a supernatural explanation, but that's where the fun is that, like if you really break down Blair Witch, and you break down the mythology and you break down all the points in the case, there's no logical explanation for it. There has to be some kind of supernatural.
Yeah. Cause I feel like even a lot of the theories and stuff I had read, even about Mike and Josh, were actually the ones that led Heather out there to kill her and stuff. Then it kind of spins off into one of them was possessed by Rustin Parr, and
which to me is like all valid, to me, like absolutely, like did Josh, like it's, like was Josh out there by himself, like faking, like ripping his teeth out just by himself, which I think is even more terrifying than somebody else doing it.
Yeah.
And then was he just had gone crazy, and then he went and, basically lured them into this house and killed Mike, and then, then killed Heather. Yeah. I mean, absolutely that, that could have happened, but then that doesn't explain what happened so what happened to Josh? And if Mike and Josh killed Heather, then what happened to them? Why did they disappear from the planet off the face of the earth? You know what I mean? Like,
is that something, if you guys ever do hopefully get a chance to revisit Blair Witch in some way, is that something you would explore, or are those things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the sequel that we wrote for Lionsgate, definitely lays in a lot of mysteries, but has that component of time travel, and I can't exactly remember, but I definitely feel like there are some answers to some stuff that happened in the first one. I mean, there's, obviously we open a lot more questions, but there's definitely a component to it that basically, that goes into some of the stuff that happened. I mean, in our sequel, the 3 original filmmakers are in the movie. Like they, I can't really say too much about it, but they're in the movie. I mean, they're, you see, well, at least you see them in the movie. You see them multiple times in the movie,
Cool. Hopefully we'll see that someday.
Yeah. I mean, I think the script it's a good script. And the people that have read it are like, man, why didn't they do this or whatever? And, it might be something that, I mean, look, if Greg and I succeed with, our TV empire, the little empire that we're building, and we get a hit show, and we get it, because how it is, you get one show and then you get another show, and then, you start, that's our goal, is to have, multiple shows going. If that happens and we get enough heat, I think that there's a good chance that, if I'm always involved in developing movies, I'm going to get behind the camera of a feature, one day again, hopefully, if the coronavirus doesn't, get me. But that's the plan. The plan is to do so. If one of my, you never know, if one of my movies explodes and does a little, does well and makes a little money for somebody, they might come back and say, hey, Ed, do you want to do another, want to do a Blair Witch movie, or we want to do a Blair Witch TV show? And of course we would, if we, we would love to do that. We've told, we've been pretty obvious with that, pretty open with that. So you never know, but for right now, I mean, Greg and I are pretty happy with where we are, and we're doing well.
Good.
Without Blair Witch, you know.
Yeah, of course. I feel like, you know, sometimes, obviously, I think a lot of it, when people want to talk about it, is less about maybe reminiscing and constantly just talking about the same thing over and over, and more about the fact that it still is, over 20 years later, probably one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Well,
and I think, a lot of people still feel like that. I mean, I'm much like Matt, who wrote the book, which is amazing.
There's Matt,
such, like, I mean, to see that, like, I feel like you don't get that with a lot of franchises and a lot of brands, and Blair Witch still has that fresh. Because I see some people online say, oh, you know, if you watch it nowadays, it doesn't work. I've showed it to some people who never seen it before, and the reaction that I seen says something completely different.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Blair Witch is, anyway, thanks for all that. I mean, you know, it's kind of amazing to be, I feel so blessed that I was a part of it, you know? You know, and I still, I mean, you know, I have a career now because of Blair Witch, you know, like the idea of my life being without Blair Witch is, you know, there's no separating us, you know, and fortunately for me, you know, a lot of people ask me, like, you know, don't you get tired of talking about Blair Witch? I'm like, as long as somebody wants to talk to me about Blair Witch, I'll talk. Why would I not want to talk about Blair Witch? You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you're interested, I mean, you know, I'm not going to like go out and just babble, you know, and start talking about Blair Witch without people asking me whatever. But yeah, if you ask me about it, I mean, of course, I love talking about it. You know, I love that it has that connection with people. But you know, I just feel so fortunate to have been a part of, you know, this movie that yeah, you're right, has become this thing that, again, it won't go away. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, you know, a lot of people say, oh, number 2 wasn't the first nail in the coffin, and then a couple of years ago we got another nail in the coffin. I honestly, yeah, maybe in some ways, you know, people are upset because they feel like the franchise has been killed off, but
yeah,
I just think a lot of people are willing to forget about that.
Yeah, it's the franchise has definitely been mishandled. Yeah,
unfortunately, but I still think anybody who's an actual fan is willing to kind of just forget about that and go back 20 years and just look solely at the first movie.
Yeah. I mean, because I think that the idea, you know, was like, you know, it was like, for us, it was like this, you know, Blair Witch created this playground that we loved playing in, and more than, you know, any other movie that we had ever, you know, the idea that we had ever come up with up until that point. And even now, you know, up to this, I mean, it just created this whole idea of, like, you know, this world that opened up, that it just wasn't about the movie. It was about, you know, the legend, and it was about examining, you know, the evidence and the mystery of what happened, you know, 200 years ago, and, you know, the fact that something weird happens every 50 years, and you know, and then, you know, the disappearance of the 3 filmmakers, and, you know, and there's so much, like, raw material produced, you know, about this fictional story, you know what I mean? And we did it, you know, mostly for marketing, but we were doing it also just for fun, you know, because it was like, we had created all this information. We were like, oh man, I think people would love to see this, you know? So it created this, you know, it created this whole kind of crazy internet buzz, and, you know, was like this viral, you know, this kind of created this viral craziness. And we all, you know, it was a well played and well distributed, and, you know, Artisan and us, we worked together really well, and it was, you know, and all the planets aligned. We got really lucky. And now I think people go back and start, like, unfolding that story and going, holy shit, it just, you know, it was this incredible, not just because it was a horror movie or whatever that scared people or whatever, it was weird, but it really was a really unique cinematic experience. You know what I mean? It was, you know, and I hate, like, to put us, you know, to even talk about us in the same, you know, in the same sentence, the same paragraph as like, Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, you know what I mean? But, like when I heard the story of War of the Worlds, that to me, that fascinated me, man, like the idea of what happened, and to hear the radio play and to like kind of speculate as far as like, hell yeah, dude, I would have been scared. I would have been freaking out. I understand exactly what happened, and the power of media, you know what I mean? The power of radio at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Blair Witch came out and like, was again like a evidence of like the power of media, the power of cinema, the power of television, and then for the first time, I think the power of the internet, to market.
Yeah. Sometimes, I personally feel like sometimes maybe that glosses over the talent that you guys have. I do think that, there's been people in the past, maybe not to have something as successful as Blair Witch, but they just kind of fade away and you don't really hear of anything. I feel like you guys have kind of carried on, and it's not solely from Blair Witch. I think, I guess it was a perfect storm in a lot of ways, but it took, I think, guys with the passion and the talent that you had to kind of bring it to where it was.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, I mean, look, we, I think we all have a certain amount of talent. Everybody has a certain amount of talent, and it's just a matter of like exploiting that, or finding that talent and having the opportunity to exploit that talent. And I think, we all worked our asses off on Blair Witch, but it wasn't anything different than any other movie I'd done up to that point. And, and I know plenty of, I'm sure you do as well. Like, you make these films and you put all your heart and soul into it. And most of the time, like you were saying, like 99% of the time, it amounts to nothing, because that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But when you get lucky and you kind of, we just got lucky. We had the right idea at the right time, and there was the right amount of, it was the right partnership between, Greg and Dan and Ben and, Mike and Rob and everybody that was involved in the production, all my, people from Maryland. It just worked out right, you know what I mean? And I think that's, we really did catch lightning in a bottle, you know what I mean? But I think, I think, we're all have abilities, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think any of us are, like Martin Scorsese or anybody who like is truly like super gifted, but who knows, we still, hopefully have some years left to create stuff. But, I like, again, man, the idea that for me, like just having Blair Witch is such a huge part of my life. And I feel so fortunate to have been a part of it that, and Dan and I, we would always talk about when we were doing the press tour, we're like, this is never going to happen to us again. You know what I mean? Like, this is it. And we realized that, I don't think any of us, came out of Blair Witch thinking that, that we were going to make another Blair Witch the following summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So after kind of, well, I wouldn't say it died down, but when things started to kind of calm down after the release, what happened from that point then? When you wouldn't come on board with the sequel and stuff, and they were pushing to release it, within a year and stuff like that, what did you just take some time off, kind of try and get over what just happened?
I mean, it really was a weird. The after effects of Blair Witch, the first few years were, a cool, a great time because, we were experiencing new things and we were learning stuff, but it was a really weird, painful time. And we, technically, like, what we did was we did Blair Witch, and then Dan Myrick and I didn't want to do another horror movie. Like, we had, I don't think neither of us were like horror. I think Dan had a pretty good idea for another horror movie. But none of, we didn't really have like this. I think a lot of filmmakers that make horror movies are really into horror, and they have 3 or 4 horror scripts ready to go, as soon as you succeed. Dan and I didn't have that. I mean, we had other scripts, but they weren't horror movies. So, and people were just basically, wanting a horror movie from us. And that's the last thing we wanted to do. So we set off to try to kind of, break, like, we felt that the only way to kind of break the mold on Blair Witch, or like to come back from Blair Witch, is to do something completely different than Blair Witch. Like something, stupid, not that Blair Witch was like a work of genius or whatever, but something really like a dumb movie. We wanted to make a comedy. We wanted to make something that was silly and like outlandish and offensive. Like we were big fans of Monty Python and Saturday Night Live and Naked Gun, the Airplane, those movies, and we set out to write this script called Heart of Love, which was like the stupidest title we could come up for the movie. And the story of Heart of Love is, a tale of it's a tragedy, nothing huge, but it fell apart for various reasons. Dan and I, for the first time since we had met in film school, were having, collaborative issues. We were involved, we were kind of scattered ourselves. Like Greg went on to do the television stuff with Dave Goyer, the aforementioned Freaky Links, and the rest of us kind of stayed and worked on Heart of Love. But we were a little rudderless, or a lot rudderless. For the first time, I think, in our lives, especially in my life, I had like money, I had a little bit of money. So, I was able to like enjoy life and not be stressed out about, where my rent was coming from. And I was able to like get married and start thinking about having a family and, all this stuff. So I think life got in the way also, but it was, it was a few years of just like, one foot in the filmmaking world and one foot completely out of the filmmaking world. And I think that, looking back on that time, I mean, obviously, hindsight is 2020, definitely would have done things differently. But I think, it happened for a reason. And during that time, Artisan was going to distribute Heart of Love, but it ended up being where they kind of used it mostly as leverage to try to get us to make another Blair Witch movie.
Right. Okay.
And there was another opportunity to do the prequel that we turned down. And I think at that point, that was one of the big, if you wanted to point to one moment in time where we should have, zigged when we zagged, it was that time. I think, I remember that they offered us, a pretty good amount of money to do the prequel, and they would this is after Book of Shadows. And then they would basically let us do the prequel, and then right after the prequel, we could go into Heart of Love. And, I was, I guess, 31 at the time, and Dan wasn't much older. We had this Heart of Love script that we really actually did love. We were very excited about it, and we kind of were like, we don't, we can always go back to Blair Witch, I mean? So we said no. And I think at that point things started going really south, and then 9/11 happened, and, the whole world went into kind of a shock. That was it, and then eventually the partnership kind of broke up, and then eventually Greg and I kind of got back into each other's radar and started working together. We did, a few, Rob came back in, and we did Altered, and we did Seventh Moon, we did Lovely Molly.
How did Altered come about?
Altered was, this was, almost 5 years after Blair Witch, but I got a script called Probed by this writer named Jamie Nash, and this producer named Jeff Johnson had sent it to me, who had been involved in a lot of the Blair Witch stuff, a lot of the fan the early fan stuff. He was like one of the original major fans of the movie. And he sent me the script, and I was, for the first time since Blair Witch, I was like really I really saw the movie and I really loved it, the script, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then it turned out that Jamie lived like 45 minutes from me, which is, I live on, the East Coast of the United States, near DC. And it's not, there is filmmaking here, but it's not like, filmmakers and screenwriters, like, this is not like a filmmaking hub, you know what I mean? So it was kind of weird that this guy that I really loved, whose writing I really loved, lived near my house. So we met and we became friends, and we started working on, just kind of, I thought it was more of a comedy than it was. I mean, there's a lot of comedy in it, so I kind of wanted to make it a little darker. So we started working on the script, and then eventually I sent it to Greg, and Greg really loved it. And then Greg brought in Rob Cowie, who was, another original member of the Blair Witch team. And then Mike Manello was also involved, I think, in the marketing, but it was kind of like a reunion. Dan was the only one that he was doing his own stuff in LA, and it was kind of like, I mean, we knew I knew that I wanted to direct it. So we didn't really, there was, there wasn't a clear space for the whole team, for everybody to come back. But we went out and, we raised the money. Rob and some people went out and raised the money, and we made this movie, and, that's how it happened. We shot it in Orlando. It was a lot of fun, and it was very stressful. And learned a lot.
And I feel like, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, I think I actually mean it more as a kind of a compliment, but a lot of people don't actually, I think, know of much of these other like incredible movies you've been involved in.
No, absolutely.
I would consider
because,
Altered one. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I kind of like the idea in a way that maybe it didn't go down the route of, oh, hey, it's the Blair Witch guy again. It's another Blair Witch movie thing. Come and see it. Yeah. I kind of like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm super proud of my films. I mean, I think there are better films than others, but I put my heart into each one of my films, and none of them has had any kind of really commercial success like Blair Witch, but I think that they're decent. There's some, like I said, there's some that are better than others, and I think Altered for me was like, it took me a while to get back the confidence and like just the motivation to just get off my ass and make another movie after Blair Witch. And it was a great experience. I mean, the release was very frustrating because, it went straight to video, but it did, it has gotten, a very substantial cult following. And I get, people, all the time, such as yourself, there's a general consensus that the only movie people know of mine is Blair Witch. And that's fine. Like for me, it's like, well, if you had some commercial success, then people would know of other movies. But I do get enough kind of love, and enough people come to me for all my films and say, oh, I love this one. And oh my God, this one's really underrated. And Altered is kind of one of the, like, almost at the top of the list where people are like, they really love this movie. And I think it was a great, first collaboration between Jamie and me. And it was a great collaboration also, Greg and Mike and Rob, we all kind of, came back together and did this movie. And unfortunately, it didn't do what we wanted it to do. But I think for us, artistically, it was and socially, I guess you want to, if you want to use that word, it was a great experiment for us, because it definitely was, it was a fun movie. And and I, once it came out and people started seeing it, there's definitely a lot of people who really loved the movie, and I love that because I'm a big fan of the movie as well. I think the performances are solid, and I think it was, it's kind of a weird little film, which I think people, and I think that's kind of the strange thing about it is the idea that like you, and kind of lessons that I've learned as a filmmaker is that, like what we were talking about before is the idea that like, you explain everything. Like there is a formula for horror. There is a commercial formula for horror. There's a commercial formula for action. There are commercial formulas and they change throughout the years. And I think that part of being like a successful commercial filmmaker is kind of balancing, the commercial formula with, the uniqueness that you can bring to that commercial formula. And I think as far as a filmmaker, like I think that my films are all pretty unique, but I think that the commercial formula, even Blair Witch, like, obviously now you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, it has a great commercial formula, but really it doesn't. It's a movie that, was shot on video and it looks like crap, and you know what I mean? Like it's a weird. Yeah. It's not like people who said, oh yeah, this is going to be the next big thing. People nobody thought it was going to do what it did. So for me, like, making a horror movie making a movie has always been about bringing something really unique to the table. And until recently, I've kind of shunned away the commercial, not trappings, but the commercial kind of aspects of the films I make, you know what I mean? And I think working in television and having, none of my films really blow up theatrically or, make waves after Blair Witch has taught me that, that if you want to have commercial success, you have to play that game. You have to play in that arena. You have to learn how to play in that arena. And some of the, the great filmmakers, Spielberg and, James Cameron. I mean, there's filmmakers that know how to do it, and you see their films, there are some people that are really great at it. And I think for me, like, I gravitate towards really unique and kind of non-commercial ideas, but I think now, like, the whole idea is that, I want to be I definitely want to be a more successful filmmaker now because I want to make more films, and so there is kind of a formula that I've been, kind of working on. And I think, when I make my next film, it will have, I will have grown as a filmmaker and also just kind of be more honest about, the projects that I'm choosing. Like, do I want this to have a successful run, or, be honest with yourself as far as like the commercial aspects and the commercial possibilities of this, the stuff that I'm making. So, like I would like, so, you kind of change the goal, so the goal now, I think for me as a filmmaker to make films is to make a commercial film, I don't think that making something like really obscure and something that has very little limited, possibilities is something that I would do, that I would do again right now. You know what I mean? But, so anyway, you learn. And every time I do a TV show, I learn stuff. There's so many talented people out there. And, you learn every day from, actors and directors of photography and script supervisors and, people all around you that kind of, they show you new things, and that's, I think this, it's what keeps me so excited about, doing television, and is that, I'm working a lot, I'm definitely I direct a lot. And I think, like everything else, the more you do it, the better you become at it, or, the more knowledgeable you become at it. So, I'm very excited to make another horror movie or to make another movie generally, speaking, but, because I have all these lessons, that I've learned from, the non-commercial success of my previous films, and also just a lot of knowledge that I've acquired, during my television career, for the last 5 years. So I'm definitely anxious to get back, and do a feature. But I'm also, again, really excited about the television possibilities that are happening for us right now.
I guess as regards the feature films, it's kind of a weird place to be in because, I mean, I think with something like Altered, maybe if you had been given $20 million, I don't know if it would have been the movie it was. And I don't even necessarily mean in a good way. I think the idea, the direction that the movie went, it worked. Like, it worked perfectly, and I'm just not sure. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'm not sure if the people who love that movie as much as they do would have liked it if you had.
I mean, look, and it's not like it's not just budget though. Like, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, a $20 million version of Altered would have been a different film for sure. And like I said, like, I wouldn't change anything about Altered. I mean, obviously, as the filmmaker, you go back and you're like, oh, I should have done this, and you learn stuff. And sometimes you're like, maybe we should have edited this, or maybe I should have gone handheld here, or I should have done this, whatever. But generally speaking, I'm proud of the movie, and I think we did. It was a nice collaborative effort, and the actors did a great job. I think it's shot really well. It's it's a good film. It's a good little horror film. You know what I mean? A weird kind of sci-fi horror mix. And I think you're right. I think the people that really love Altered would not have liked the bigger budget, Tom Cruise version of Altered. But it's more, it's not really just budget though. It's more about like, just commercial aspects of stuff, like in Altered, like to make Altered a little more commercial, maybe, I would have laid off a little bit of the molestation kind of stuff, you know what I mean? The kind of the dark past. And maybe I would have made it, like more, kind of more have more jump scares, or, I'm saying, like, there's certain things that you can do to, like, make a film more commercial. But like you said, I think Altered is what it is, and I wouldn't change really anything about it. But now, the way I approach movies is a little bit different than I approached back then, now I just my approach is a little more like, okay, I want to tell a unique story, but I also want the movie to succeed.
It needs to include these things, or these
I want it to be, successful. I want to be able to make another movie after this, and I think that's the goal, at this point.
Yeah.
Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.